At first, it looked like the kind of missing person case that usually follows a familiar script. A concerned grandson hadn't heard from his grandmother in weeks. A daughter insisted her mother was fine. The home looked lived in, maybe a little disorganized, but nothing that screamed danger. And for a while, that was enough to keep the truth locked away. Because police didn't realize something crucial. The answer to the entire mystery was already inside the house, hidden in the garage, inside a storage bin. Her name was Denise Carter. Her mother was Helen Grant. And the person who refused to stop pushing was Helen's grandson, Ethan. Ethan didn't need a trained investigator's eye to recognize something was wrong. He just needed the details to add up. And from the start, they didn't. The messages Ethan received from Helen didn't sound like her. The tone was off. The wording felt forced, and the timing didn't match what Ethan knew about his grandmother's routines. Then Denise stepped in with explanations, first gentle, then increasingly specific, like she was trying to guide police towards something that would satisfy them. Helen was away with family. Helen had an appointment. Helen was with her sister. Each version was just convincing enough to stall the next question. But each excuse also created a new problem. Because Denise wasn't building a single consistent story. She was swapping it out, replacing it before anyone had enough time to test it. That pattern mattered. It showed planning, not panic. It showed someone managing information rather than someone searching for answers. Denise stayed one step ahead. When officers asked what they needed to know, she gave them a new route to follow, rooms to avoid, locations to check later, details to focus on first. She tried to control where they looked and what they thought they'd find. She repeatedly claimed Helen's belongings were still there, clothes in the room, evidence the mother was still around, as if physical items could prove life better than human presence ever could. But the more Denise talked, the more her story started to reveal the seams. Eventually, police made calls to verify one of Denise's claims. The doctor's office she said Helen had been at. Helen wasn't there. Not today. Not that week. Not under the name Denise provided. That was the first major crack because it wasn't a small contradiction. It was a direct refusal of the timeline Denise was presenting. And once the timeline was broken, everything else became harder to trust. Ethan kept pressing. He told police the messages didn't sound like Helen. He said his grandmother hadn't been seen in person for weeks. And most importantly, he pointed out that Denise's explanations kept changing, even when the questions stayed the same. That's when police expanded their approach. They stopped treating the case like a simple disappearance and started treating it like something that needed verification at every step. They compared stories. They looked for overlaps. They asked what could be proven instead of what just sounded plausible. Denise's version of events didn't survive the comparison. Every time someone tried to confirm a detail, the story shifted again. The more pressure officers put on the facts, the more Denise's answers collapsed into contradictions. Then came the part that changed the investigation completely. Officers searched the property more closely. Not in the quick, superficial way people do when they believe the worst won't be there. In the thorough way you do when every lie you've heard so far is begging for a physical explanation. And in the garage, they found what Denise never wanted them to see. A large storage bin. It looked wrong the moment it was noticed because it wasn't just clutter. It felt like something placed carefully, something meant to be overlooked. And when officers got closer, they realized it smelled wrong too. The kind of odor that doesn't belong in an ordinary home search. Inside was the body of Helen Grant. For a moment, the entire case stopped being a mystery. The missing person story became a homicide investigation in real time, not in theory. Because there's no away with relatives when the mother you're searching for is in a container in the garage. But even after the body was found, Denise didn't tell the truth. Denise was confronted by detectives, and she immediately tried to reshape the narrative again, this time around the idea that Helen's death was an accident. In Denise's account, she claimed she heard a loud noise in the middle of the night. She believed someone was breaking in, She said she panicked and moved through the house, and during the chaos, the gun went off. It was a story designed to fit shock, designed to sound emotional, designed to make the question of intent feel unfair, like it was impossible to judge in a moment of fear. And in a different case, it might have worked. But detectives noticed something disturbing right away. Denise didn't sound like someone who had just lived through a traumatic, accidental event. She sounded rehearsed, too calm in places where panic should have taken over. She described the sequence of events with unnatural clarity, like she'd already arranged the pieces into a version that would be easiest to defend. Her story played like a script. Then the medical evidence arrived, and it turned her accident into something much worse. The autopsy did not support a simple shooting during a break-in. Helen had not only been shot, she had also suffered puncture wounds to the neck. Denise never mentioned those injuries. Not once. And that omission mattered more than anything she actually said, because it showed the story she told wasn't just incomplete, it was carefully curated. If Denise had truly been shocked and overwhelmed, she wouldn't have been able to control which details police learned and which details were left out. But she controlled the narrative. And the autopsy made it clear she'd left out the part of the truth that would show this wasn't a brief, accidental moment. The injuries suggested a more violent attack, one that didn't match the desperate, chaotic version Denise presented. The evidence didn't just contradict Denise. It exposed the shape of a cover-up, because this wasn't a lie told once. It was a lie maintained for weeks. While Ethan kept trying to get answers, Denise kept telling people Helen was elsewhere. She told family members Helen was staying with relatives. She told police Helen was going to appointments. She claimed she would return soon, that things would be explained later, that the delay was normal. Denise's lies bought time, not just for investigators to slow down, but for the truth to remain out of reach. And the longer the case lasted, the more outrageous the situation became. People were still living in the same home while the mother they were searching for sat hidden only a few feet away. That detail is what made the case so unsettling. Not only because of the killing, but because of what came afterward. Then detectives turned their attention toward another person connected to the home. Denise's boyfriend, Marcus Hale. Marcus lived in the house. He told police he had seen Helen before Thanksgiving, and after that, he said he didn't know what Denise had been doing. He denied having any part in the murder. He tried to position himself as someone who had been kept in the dark. Investigators had to decide what that meant. They understood one simple reality. Living in a home where a body is hidden raises questions even if you never commit the crime yourself. How could something like that be present and not known? How long could someone ignore what they must have noticed? And what did Marcus actually see or choose not to see? He was part of the environment where a mother could vanish from the world while still being hidden inside the walls of a house shared by other people. And that's where the story turned even darker. This wasn't a case of one person acting alone in total isolation. It was a case where deception ran long enough to involve the people around her, even if those people didn't realize how deep the truth went. At the center of it all was Denise's obsession with controlling what everyone believed. She didn't simply lie to police. She lied to family. She lied at the exact times truth would have mattered. She used phone messages, changing explanations, selective details, and constant redirection. The strategy wasn't to tell one lie well. The strategy was to keep everyone moving in circles long enough that the missing mother would never be found before it was too late. Meanwhile, Ethan watched his grandmother disappear in real time, and he didn't accept comfort just because someone sounded convincing. Ethan's questions forced the investigation to slow down and verify. Because when you demand proof instead of comfort, the cracks stop being tiny. They widen, they multiply, they become impossible to ignore. That pressure didn't just expose inconsistencies. It led officers to the one place Denise never thought they'd look with enough certainty. The garage where the storage bin waited quietly, unnoticed or ignored, until thorough searching made it unavoidable. Once the body was found, The case stopped being about where Helen went. It became about what Denise did and how long she kept it hidden. Helen Grant was dead, hidden in the garage, inside a storage bin. Denise Carter had lied to police, lied to family, and lied about her mother's disappearance while the truth remained in the same house. What started as a missing person mystery turned into a homicide investigation built on deception, manipulation, and betrayal. And what made the case especially chilling wasn't only the crime. It was how carefully Denise tried to keep reality suspended. She tried to make everyone believe Helen was still alive using shifting timelines and believable-sounding excuses. She pointed officers in other directions. She offered details that distracted from the most important question: why the grandmother couldn't be found anywhere while she was being stored in plain sight. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever when someone refuses to stop looking. Ethan wouldn't let it rest. Officers wouldn't accept the explanations at face value. And the evidence, once it had a chance to speak for itself, collapsed Denise's entire structure of lies. The garage gave up its secret. The bin revealed what had been hidden too long. And the woman who claimed she was trying to find her mother was the same woman responsible for making sure that mother never had a chance to come home. In the end, the story was no longer a mystery of absence. It was the story of a murder disguised as a disappearance, until the truth was found where it had been all along.